Alright guys, I know it's been a little while since I've made a video. I've been really busy, and it's taken me a while to figure some of this stuff out. So I have some notes here so that I don't miss any information for you. But this has to do with the last video, or some of the last videos I made about Wim Hoff breathing and allergies. At least, or so I thought. So again, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but this is what has worked for me and what I've figured out along the way. So this is bound to help somebody out there. I have figured out over time, doing some third-party genetic testing and whatnot, that I do have two MTHFR gene mutations, and these are more common than you might think, but basically what that means is, at least in my case, is that my detoxification system is very slow and very sluggish. That has to do with a variety of reasons, one of them being my body's inability to convert folate into its active form. So, on top of that, I also discovered that I had SIBO, which is known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And these two things in conjunction have made things rather challenging over a long period of time. But here we go. In order to mitigate a lot of my symptoms and the things that I was dealing with, and also in an effort to tame the SIBO and correct that problem, I've done a combination of fasting, intermittent fasting, and sometimes extended fasting, along with basically a keto diet. And I noticed that when I do get into ketosis, I feel so good. I feel fantastic. Inflammation drops, fog clears, like it's wonderful. So, however, what I was noticing is that when I would break my fast and I would consume higher fat meals, or higher fat in general, I would experience the symptoms of, allergies and inflammation once again. So essentially what I figured out is it was my lymph system. And this is why the breath work and the allergies seemed to be connected. When this happens and your gallbladder isn't ready for it necessarily, or it's sluggish, or your bile's thick and it's just not moving that much, and you're not doing the things that really pump the lymph system, it's like I said, it's going to be like a 100-car pileup on the highway. And the main highway for your lymph system is your thoracic duct. And when that gets bottlenecked and when that clogs up, you're going to get referred pain. Like for me, it was my upper traps in my neck area, shoulder blades, mid-back, even around the ribs and the lats and the rear delts. So I would notice that the first day or two, all that expressed pain, or at least most of it, would kind of be on my right side. There'd be a little bit on the left, but most of it would be on the right. And I mean, that's going to be gallbladder related. So I would notice after 1 to 2 days, it would then relax on my right side, and then that same sort of pain would transfer right over to my left side, the left thoracic duct area. And when you slam your body with that high fat like that, and the liver can't keep up, it puts a huge strain on your gallbladder. Things get backed up, they slow down. And if you don't know the lymph system and that thoracic duct, when it gets backed up like that, you have to understand that things like toxins, dead bacteria, other inflammatory media, it gets clogged up in there, right? It gets shunted upwards into the cervical and supraclavicular lymph nodes, if I can say that right. And those nodes are responsible for draining like the entire head, face, sinuses, ears, like things like that. So that's where the allergy symptoms would come into play. So what I would notice is after a high-fat meal, coupled with the issues that I discovered about myself, is essentially my lymph system was just very sluggish. It didn't occur to me right away that it was my lymph system. That's why this took some time to figure out. So what would happen is, especially if you're fasting, like your stomach acid's probably going to be low, the pH probably isn't going to be quite right, and this is important. A few other things are rather important, but this is a big one. So essentially what happens is, after you consume a high-fat meal, and if you don't have the proper things in place, your gallbladder is going to get hit hard, right? It's going to pump hard. And what you have to understand about the lymph system is there's no real automatic pump per se. It's certainly more manual. It's not like a heartbeat. What I personally did to help solve this situation is I do your research. That's what I did. But what worked for me is a number of different supplements and Wim Hoff breathwork. So those supplements include TUDCA, TUDCA. Just go ahead and look that up. I also got my hands on some really high quality of extra virgin olive oil, the PJ Cabos gold bottle, if you can find that. Super high polyphenol counts, really good stuff. And then a supplement for betaine hydrochloride with pepsin. And electrolytes, by the way, if you're fasting. Also a good idea to help keep the bile thinner and flowing. Betaine hydrochloride and pepsin is a really important factor, like I said earlier, especially with your fasting and MTHFR if you do suffer from that, because like low stomach acid pH signals the pancreas and the gallbladder to release bile and lipase, right? And high acidity kills pathogens, bad bacteria, and it also unlocks certain vitamins and nutrients from food that's important, like zinc, magnesium, iron, etc. So it's important to keep an eye on that. And remember that there is important communication through the vagus nerve here. Proper acid pH and acid levels will send the proper signals via the vagus nerve for parasympathetic activation. Also, I apologize for all the cuts in the video here. I have kids. Yeah, they're feral. In conclusion, I would say that if you have the same issues that I have, and you're struggling with this, and you're trying to do the ketogenic diet and fasting, it will help, but you have to keep an eye on certain things like your stomach acid. And it definitely does help to supplement with some of these other things like the TUDCA, the olive oil, and the betaine hydrochloride with pepsin, and electrolytes too. I have found that the marriage between these supplements and this sort of diet, once you nail it and get it right, works great. And definitely make sure that you are consuming enough fat if you're thin and you're doing this diet, because I'm about roughly 130 pounds. So there's not much buffer. It's rare, but you don't want to fall into a situation, and this happened to me, and it's extremely rare, but it's a non-diabetic ketoacidosis. When it's a metabolic acidosis where your body just gets too acidic, and that just causes a cascade of issues. You don't want that to happen, although it is rare. The stars kind of have to align for that. So make sure you're just countering that properly with your electrolytes, and you're not getting too deep into ketosis, and definitely consume enough vegetables for that alkaline compensation. And like I mentioned earlier, if you didn't know, to get the lymph system pumping, it takes physical movement and breath work. Breath work is a great one. That's why it works so well for me when I do it, and why it eliminates my symptoms.